So I am in conversation tonight, this October 2024, with Sri Dharma Pravartaka Acharya, scholar, philosopher, guru, founder of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, and someone I actually hold in very high esteem. Someone who has directly influenced me over the years. I've been watching his YouTube videos and reading his books and radically changed my religious views. And he's someone I consider as a mentor. It's a very special occasion to get to talk with him. He radically changed my views, and that's also the name of the book we're going to be discussing tonight. Radical Universalism. Are all religions the same? And so our theme tonight is this subtitle: Are all religions the same? And all of us who study religion, whether it's from yesterday or 30 years ago or whenever, that question comes up a lot. We see it all the time, sometimes in a good context, sometimes in a critical context of people trying to debunk religions. Other times it's just folks looking for their own personal growth and asking this question. And also questions a lot like it, such as, are all religions one? Are all religions equal? I actually saw, you may get a kick out of this, Sri Acharyaji, one famous teacher whose name I won't mention, said, we shouldn't ask this question at all. What we should actually ask is the question, are all religions good? Which he didn't answer because he didn't want to be politically incorrect. The problem is, asking the question, are all religions the same? You might have a politically incorrect answer. And I think we should be willing to listen to such answers, and we should be willing to ask such questions, even if we don't necessarily want to hear the outcome or the answer. Because spiritual growth for me, and I think you may agree, is not about being politically correct and always saying the feel-good answer. It's about asking questions that are hard and questions that may have a tough answer. That's how we grow. That's how we step out of our comfort zone. And that's one of the reasons I love your teaching so much, Sri Acharyaji, because you encourage all of us to always ask questions of everything and everyone, to always be growing. And to not be user-friendly and always be catering to, just feelings, but to really dig in. So I say this from my own experience. I always read growing up that all gods were one, all religions are one. There's no difference between the gods behind you on your shrine and Jesus. They're all one. And I never thought about that. Yes, Jim Jones is a bad guy. But we all agree he's bad, and so that was the end of the conversation. I never really thought about it beyond that. The answer was obvious. But then you, sir, in a YouTube video quite some time ago, was talking about this. And you said that the question of all religions are one leads you to a philosophical dead end. And that blew me away when I heard you say this, maybe, 2019 or 2020. And I'm like, wait a minute, philosophical dead end? And that got my attention, and it made me think, and I just started looking at religion then through a logical lens. And I never did that before you. I never thought about religion in terms of logic or rationality or logical deduction. It was just how I feel. And suddenly this question of are all religions one opened doors that went here and went there, and I started really examining my life. And that's where you come in, and your teachings became very influential to me. And I realized that a lot of things that I believe were just feel-good things, or they were things that I actually could not argue. Like I said, all religions are one. I never actually thought about that. I couldn't really argue the point. Or I just believed a lot of sound bites that I'd read on Facebook or I'd seen in a YouTube video. And that was it. It was just a feel-good sound bite. And when you take a fine-tooth comb to these things, it's quite shocking what you reveal in yourself and what your religious world actually looks like. And that's when I found myself just really focusing in on Sanatana Dharma and the tradition that you are teaching and the authentic Vedic tradition and getting rid of other things. And I started really questioning myself. So today, for those who watch my YouTube videos, they know that I do not promote religious universalism anymore. I do not say that Krishna and Jesus and Buddha and, I don't know, Mary Baker Eddy and whoever else are all the same thing. I don't say that anymore. For me, religion is about finding God, finding myself, and growing and finding the truth. And I don't really care what my neighbor thinks. I'm not about, you know, it's not to me about feel-good things. It's about logic and rationality. And this question, are all religions the same? The subtitle of your book often comes up in my head. I often think about this and this argument, because as I said at the beginning, it opens up other doors, philosophical questions. And then I'm here and I'm there. And quite honestly, your teachings in this book are like just, my mind explodes with questions I never asked myself and getting rid of assumptions I had. So I'm hoping anyone who watches this conversation between you and I tonight, they are curious, they want to explore new things, they want to investigate those things as I did and walk a path of light versus a path of darkness. So you cover a lot of topics in your book, and we're not even barely going to touch the surface. But I want to read a little bit from 2 pages in here, and this will start the conversation tonight and open the door. Before I read it, the context is, well, let me put it this way. Your book is not the only one on the topic of all religions are the same. There's now many books on the shelf by famous authors and not so famous authors. But I find a lot of those books all kind of answer this question through a compare and contrast situation. Judaism says this, Christianity says this, Sanatana Dharma says this, and they look at it that way. Or they look at the historical trends of we borrowed from here and they borrowed from us, and this story can be found in this, whatever. You take a completely different approach. So anyone who thinks they've uncovered this topic in other books, well, their library is incomplete until they get your book. You take a historical approach looking at the idea of Neo-Hinduism and Sanatana Dharma of the last few hundred years and the growth of the current belief system we have. And for me, it's just a radical perspective. It's like, wow, that never thought about that. People don't discuss this. So I want to read something now that clarifies kind of what I said, and this then will open up the floor to you, and we can expand more on this topic to get our talk going tonight. And after this, I'll say all I need to, and the floor is yours. So for anyone who has the book, this is page 68 and 69. Sri Acharya wrote, one of the phenomena that occurred during this historic period of the 1800s was the fabrication of a new movement now known as Neo-Hinduism. Neo-Hinduism was an artificial religious construct used as a paradigmatic juxtaposition to the legitimate and traditional Sanatana Dharma that had been the religion and culture of the people for thousands of years previously. Neo-Hinduism was used as an effective weapon to replace authentic Sanatana Dharma with a British invented and encouraged imitation of Vedic religion, now re-Christianed Hinduism. Neo-Hinduism was, in actuality, the newly triumphant worldview of Abrahamist, Masonic modernity with an Indian face. And this new religious movement was designed to make a subjugated people easier to manage and control. And you say on the next page, you call it Neo-Hinduism is a concocted Trojan horse manufactured by India's new colonial overlords to destroy the remnants of Vedic civilization from within. And the 2 words I love in that sentence are Trojan horse and from within, because that's what it is. I hear people talk all the time about Sanatana Dharma history, and they can talk about 1,000 years ago. They can talk about Adi Shankara or Ramanuja or whoever. But when it comes to current history, we say a lot of things, and we don't really know the history. And one problem that comes up a lot, or one thing I see that comes up that I feel is a problem, is people say things and then they'll be like, well, this is a Vedic idea and this is an authoritative idea that's found in the scriptures. But it's not, as you talk about in this book. It's actually something from Neo-Hinduism, which is created by an outside influence, but yet is somehow now 100, 200 years later become authoritative and whatever. So I wanted to open our talk tonight on this idea of what happened 200 years ago. What is this outside influence that now people don't even realize happened? Could you expand upon what I just read? And in brief, however you may want to approach the topic, because I know it is a huge topic. If you could open our talk tonight on this idea of the 1800s and Neo-Hinduism. Yeah, I would appreciate that. And with that, I'm going to pass the floor to you.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, Aaron, let me thank you very much for conducting this interview with me. I feel very honored, very privileged to have this opportunity. So thank you, and thank you for wanting to discuss this very important book. I will talk about Neo-Hinduism, what happened in the 1800s. But first, very quickly, can I just talk very quickly about why it was necessary for me to write this book?
Absolutely, absolutely. Please do.
Because I may ruin some book sales by saying this, but it's not an easy book to read. You know, there is a lot that is in here. You know, it's a little bit less than 300 pages, but the concepts are overwhelming, and it's history, it's philosophy, it's science, it's religion, it's everything. But the reason why it was important to write this book was precisely because, you know, myself as someone who, you know, I first encountered Sanatana Dharma when I was about 10 years old, when I first read the Bhagavad Gita. So I've been on this path for over 50 years now. And one thing that I have seen, both my own experience, especially early on, very early on, but I've also seen this experience with many, especially Westerners, who first encounter Sanatana Dharma. If they have any intelligence or sensitivity whatsoever, they very quickly see that there are two things that are presented to them that really are not connected. On the one hand, they will encounter the actual tradition. And what does that mean? The scriptures, you know, the Vedic scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Brahma Sutras, all of these myriad scriptures. And the scriptures have a clear and defined message. It's not a free-for-all where you're free to just interpret and, oh, it can mean anything you want it to mean. No, there is a clear, coherent message. And the entirety of the Vedic corpus speaks with one voice. So this is something that on the one hand people see. People see that there are lineages that go back thousands of years, to put it lightly. They see that there are powerful practices that weren't made up, but that also have been there forever, etc. In other words, on the one hand, they see the actual tradition of Sanatana Dharma. But unfortunately, and again, especially for Westerners, they'll also see something else. And it's absolutely contradictory to the first thing that they just saw. They will encounter, and you know, we talked about this, I am going to be blunt. They encounter fraudulent gurus who have no qualifications, who have no background, no lineage, who themselves don't meditate, don't do anything, etc., etc. And they will give them a radically different message. They'll say to them, to the innocent Westerner who is attracted to this, oh, yes, yes, yes. What do we believe? Oh, what are you? You're a Christian? No, no, no. Stay Christian. It doesn't matter. Oh, no, we don't believe even in religion. We're not a religion. We're a way of life. And it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're ethical, non-ethical. No, no. In this path, you know, and sometimes they feel guilty even calling it a path, what to speak of a religion. In this path, you're free to do, say anything you want, and you're still within the bounds of fill in the blank. Often they'll try to pick the most innocuous, most generic term imaginable. Many of the fraudulent gurus want to speak of calling this religion by its actual name, which is Sanatana Dharma. They're too cowardly to even call it Hinduism. They'll say, oh, this path, which, I consider it to be just the path of universal consciousness. They'll pick the most broad thing conceivable, which the path has never called itself. The path calls itself Sanatana Dharma. That's in the scriptures. Indeed, even the word Hinduism is not there. But the point being, the innocent person who first encounters this path, they'll see on the one hand great authenticity, on the other hand, these modern gurus spewing nonsense. Now, as far as that individual, from a phenomenological perspective, a psychological perspective, that innocent individual who is there, what he will now do with that absolutely diametrically opposed juxtaposition is one of several things. Either, if he is sadly, he or she, not very intelligent, as you were saying a short time ago, that is, they base all their so-called spirituality, so-called, on pure emotion. They're a new age individual, and all they care about is, just their, as long as it makes me feel good emotionally, that's all that matters. If that's who they are, then they will accept everything that fraudulent guru is telling them. What? Oh, this sounds so tolerant, this sounds so nice, etc., etc. Which, tolerance is a good thing. Sanatana Dharma is the most intelligently tolerant religion on earth, but not so tolerant to the point where your mind is so open that your brain falls out. We also have philosophy. Anyone who studies Sanatana Dharma even slightly understands that we have philosophy as profound as anyone you can mention, as Plato, as Aristotle, as Hegel, as Heidegger, as Kant, as any of these individuals. Indeed, we leave them in the dust, actually, as far as our ability to think about things truly rationally and in accordance with all the categories of philosophy, ontology, metaphysics, ethics, etc., etc. So this will be one person. They're not very intelligent. Everything is just touchy-feely for them. They will just eat this all up, what the fraudulent guru is saying. Or if that innocent Westerner is someone who is truly philosophically inclined, again, with everything that truly means, academically, in every way, not just, my philosophy is I like chocolate ice cream. No, not pop philosophy. Actual philosophy, being able to think in a categorical way, being able to do propositional analysis. That being the case, they will immediately run toward the authentic part of what is Sanatana Dharma. And this is the thing. If an intelligent person does indeed do that, that is, they embrace the authentic Sanatana Dharma, they will have everything that their soul has been looking for, as far as intellectual answers, as far as experiential ability to truly feel, know the presence of God, etc. They'll have everything. So this was the problem, was that I saw this all my life, that people were always confused. I should speak about the third category of person. That is a person who just throws his hands up in the air and what is this? This is telling me what these modern gurus are telling me one thing, the scriptures are telling me another thing. What is this? And they just end up, becoming a born-again Baptist or whatever. They join some other religions. They say this is too confusing. Well, this is a problem that unfortunately has, I don't want to be too dramatic and say that it has destroyed Hinduism. It has damaged Sanatana Dharma tremendously, especially in the last, century and a half. So 20th century and now 21st century. It has damaged us tremendously. And to cut to the chase, this is why Sanatana Dharma, more so than any other religion on the face of the earth, is a laughingstock. And we know this. You are a follower of Sanatana Dharma. I am too. 50 plus years I've been on this path, and in more orthodox a way than practically any human being on earth. Sanatana Dharma is today a laughingstock. When people think of Hinduism, they think of silly things. They think of New Age people. They think of yogis on beds of nails. They think of fraudulent gurus just making money. The word guru is a dirty word. When you hear the word guru, it means a fake teacher. Imagine if you took rabbi or pastor or imam and you made that synonymous with fake spiritual teacher. You couldn't. But guru, oh yes, a computer guru, a whatever guru. How unfortunate. So today's Sanatana Dharma is not taken seriously, and the reason why is something that arose first externally, but then internally. But we'll get to that in a second. So this is why I wrote this. I wrote it initially as a very long philosophical essay. I forget the year, maybe 2003, roughly, something like that. It was read by hundreds of thousands of people because it immediately went online and it was on about 100 websites, the full thing, about 40 pages. Then it became a book, 2006, I believe, something like that, Voice of India. And at that point, the guesstimates from the publisher and others is that over 1 million people have read Radical Universalism. That was as of years ago, actually. Now it's been more than that. And then finally, I decided, all right, time to expand this because it was a short book. Yeah, originally the book, the original edition was maybe 70 pages. This is 200 something pages, so it's like three times bigger at least. Mm-hmm. And again, as far as the crux of the issue, the book discusses two things. It discusses radical universalism, that is, this propositional statement, all religions are the same. Is that true? Is that not true? It examines that. But it also talks about the all-important background from whence that idea arose. And that's almost more important, actually. Because truthfully, I know you know this. Anyone with an IQ above 60 knows this. As far as the question, are all religions the same? Anyone with any intelligence knows, of course not. So that was the easy part to deal with. But I still tear that apart through propositional analysis in about 15 different ways, using syllogism, using true logic. But more important, almost, is the question, where did this come from? What a truly stupid idea. We know nothing is the same in this world. Are politics the same? Imagine for people who are out there who they think they know something about politics and they're really fanatical. Trump is the devil. Trump is our savior. All right. If you were to say the same thing to such people, well, don't you understand? Politics are all the same. It doesn't matter what you... That would not work. No one would agree with that. Indeed, the radical universalists, even people who would say all religions are the same, if you were to try that with them with politics, they would jump down your throat. Nothing is the same. There is distinction between all things. But, we'll get to the arguments against radical universalism later. Again, the swamp from which radical universalism arose is this historical phenomenon known as Neo-Hinduism. And I need to make this clear. I by no means created this term. This is an academic term. Indeed, all academicians make this distinction, that Sanatana Dharma previous to about 200 years ago versus how it has been expressed for the last 200 years are radically distinct. Every scholar knows this. Any professor of religious studies, you give them the term, professor, have you heard this term, Neo-Hinduism? Oh, yes, and they'll explain what it means. They'll explain exactly what it means in the same way that I do in this book. So this is a very true phenomenon. Now, what is it? First, let's talk about what is it, and yes, how it arose, what its history was, etc., etc. First, again, previous to approximately 200 years ago, the world of Sanatana Dharma, the Sanatana Dharma community, while there were always distinctions, there were always some divisions theologically, etc., when it came to the basics, there was absolute agreement. In the same way that you could say this about, Islam. There are certain things where, of course, are there some disagreements? Sure. But do they all agree that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet and the new revelation is the Quran? Oh, they all agree. Well, in the same way, and it's sad that this will be a shock to some people. Even that this will be a shock to some people shows the problem. It is exactly the same with Sanatana Dharma as it is with every other religion. We have our foundational beliefs. And if you uphold those beliefs in your life, you are a follower of Sanatana Dharma. If you reject those beliefs, you are not a follower of Sanatana Dharma. And this is not just someone's opinion. These are the views of every single guru, acharya, preceptor, rishi, in other words, every single spiritual teacher within the entire domain of Sanatana Dharma up until about 200 years ago. And what are some of those foundational beliefs? First of all, Veda. That Veda is aparushaya. That is, it is not something that's man-made, it is perfect. And not really good reading. No, it's perfect. That is the authentic traditionalist understanding. We wish to know God, we wish to know truth. This is the epistemological mechanism by which we know that truth. There is a phenomenon known as Veda. Veda means knowledge, not just any knowledge, not auto mechanics. No, that Veda, that knowledge which is eternal in nature, that is known through the Vedic scriptures. So that's something everyone accepted. That the way that we live life as true humans, that we live a life that is wholesome, that is healthy, that is positive, that is good, is we follow Dharma. We follow the eternal natural way. This was another tenet that was there throughout the totality of Sanatana Dharma. Again, if you went to any knowledgeable Hindu, let's say in the year 1650, and you were to ask them these two things, you can go to a semi-educated person, you could go to a leader, to a brahmana, to a guru, and say, can you please confirm this for me? All of you people who follow Sanatana Dharma, you believe that the Vedic scriptures are the way of knowing truth, and that we must follow Dharma. That is, we must follow the natural law. If one does not follow Dharma, then they are going to have the opposite of all these good things, the opposite of health, the opposite of truth, etc. Is this what you believe? You could go to any Hindu guru, and I'm giving only two. There are hundreds of these things. They would say, oh, absolutely, that's what we believe. That was real Sanatana Dharma. Now, what began to happen was something called colonialism. And very specifically, British colonialism was very different from other forms of colonialism. Not that it matters, but just so people know why I know so much about history. I have a PhD in languages and cultures of Asia from University of Wisconsin-Madison. I've studied all of this. I know what I'm talking about when it comes to Hinduism, history, philosophy, theology, etc. I'm not some guy who watched a few YouTube videos and said, I'm an authority now. So even when it comes to this phenomenon known as colonialism, French colonialism was not like British colonialism. Spanish, Portuguese, etc. colonialisms were not like British colonialism. Don't want to go too deeply into this. We can, for the next hour, just talk about that alone. British colonialism...
Or folks can just read your book.
Yes. Much of everything that we're talking about is in the book, except in exquisite detail. British colonialism, unlike other forms of colonialism, had a mission. It was a globalist mission, first of all. And when you read that little snippet of mine, I mentioned Masonic. I'm not one of these conspiracy theories. No, Masonry, Freemasonry was foundational to British colonialism very specifically. Every scholar knows that. They've written about this, But why is this the case? The British at this time, that is, let's say 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, 20th century, etc. They had as their sacred mission the idea of creating not just global empire, a globalist empire. These were people who themselves, due to influences of several things, first of all, their own Christianity. Christianity itself is rather a universal doctrine. That's why, for example, the Catholic Church is, Catholic means universal, but also being influenced by Freemasonry, being influenced by the era of the Enlightenment. The British saw it as their mission, not just to conquer peoples, but indeed to bring about one world, a globalist empire. This being the case, when they first began to have a serious foothold in India, and we have to talk about India because indeed, India and Sanatana Dharma are very much tied. Maybe later, if you want to, we can talk about something else that's close to my heart, and that is that Sanatana Dharma is not Indian, but it's something that anyone can follow. Thus, you and myself, we're not Indian, but we're following it. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
The British saw something there in what they were encountering as Hinduism that they felt could serve their interests in bringing about a globalist empire, and not civilization, empire, an empire that they would control. As a result, of course, they immediately, very quickly, worked very hard to influence quote-unquote Hindu. These individuals were not very knowledgeable about Hinduism. They weren't even that intelligent, but Hindu intellectuals. This was the case especially in Bengal, only because that's where the British Raj was headquartered, was in the state of Bengal, the region of Bengal at that time. This being the case, they went out of their way to influence these people. So what did they do? They sent in Christian missionaries, not just any Christian missionaries. Fundamentalist Christian missionaries? No, people are not aware of this. They didn't send in, snake handling, charismatic Christians. No, they sent in, interestingly, also universalistic missionaries. So they sent in people who were Unitarian Universalists. They sent in people who were Anglicans, but again, their idea of Christianity was also the idea of globalist empire. They were servants of the British Empire, etc. So they sent these people in. They also indeed sent in Masons. People are not aware of the influence of Freemasonry, especially in West Bengal, but throughout India. They immediately started opening up lodges and did everything they could to grab all of the intellectuals that were there. And to make a long story short, they attempted to start a movement. Not attempted, it was successful, but at the time it was an attempt. They wanted to start a movement that would subvert Hinduism from within in order to serve the greater interests globally of this globalist empire that was their dream for the future. Which, just as an aside, of course, their dream was successful. But that's another story, But in any case, what ended up happening was, indeed, they recruited many Hindu intellectuals, and they began a so-called reform movement within Sanatana Dharma. They tried to Christianize it, again, in a general sense. They tried to modernize it, and modernize meaning all of those elements that are recognized as the elements of modernity. What does that mean? That means radical egalitarianism. That means scientism. That means, again, globalism itself, etc. All these elements they tried to ingest, they tried to force into Sanatana Dharma. So to make a long story short, they were successful in that they recruited several intellectuals. Ram Mohan Roy was the first one of significance, and he did all of his work in the 1820s. Now, this is what's interesting. All of the individuals who you can name, and in Radical Universalism, I name them all. I give you their biographies. I quote from their books. I quote from their speeches. All of these were individuals who, while they claimed that they were proud Hindus, they hated Hinduism. They saw it as backward. In other words, they were a mirror reflection of these British overlords telling them what to do, what to think, what to say.
You actually write in the book, Sri Acharyaji, that the goal of maybe Roy and others was to just make India a Christian nation.
Yes.
To eventually get rid of Hinduism completely.
That was the goal among many of the Neo-Hindu leaders at the time. With Ram Mohan Roy specifically, he was basically a practicing Christian. He wrote a book called something like The Precepts of Jesus Christ, something like that. I can't remember the exact name. But he wrote a book in order to introduce the Hindu community to Christianity and convert them to Christianity. Keshub Chandra Sen was another person who came after him. This person was worse. This person learned Hebrew so that he could study the Old Testament perfectly. This was a person who dressed like an Old Testament prophet. This was a person who, this was the other thing. Like Abrahamism, these so-called Hindu leaders hated what they called idol worship. Of course, we know better. We don't call it idol worship. It's murti worship. But when you see the writings of these so-called Hindu reformers, people who, some more knowledgeable Indian Hindus today, for example, they'll know these names of the people we're mentioning. When you see their writings, they rail against all this idolatry and all this heathenry. They literally use Christian missionary terminology to attack Hinduism. And in any case, to make a long story short, yes, these people were crypto-Christians pretending to be Hindus, and this is the crux of the issue. What we now call Neo-Hinduism. All these ideas, came from these people who were really crypto missionaries. They hated Hinduism, even though they were Indian. They had Hindu names. They saw Hinduism as backward, as superstitious, etc. That became the foundation. That became Neo-Hinduism and more. That's step one. Step two, much of what modern people today, both Indians and Westerners who, I find this fascinating, the Bhagavad Gita, and they have no idea that half of what they think is actually Vedic is actually coming from Neo-Hinduism. One of these is radical universalism. And there are many other tenets. In the book itself, I list, and I could have gone on, I list 13 tenets of Neo-Hinduism, and I destroy them, quoting the Vedic scriptures. I show how these ideas that today many people just accept, yes, this is what Hinduism believes. And I show, nope, this person said it 150 years ago. Nope, this person started this idea 200 years ago. And here's what the Vedic scriptures actually say, and they're the opposite. So, for example, I'll just give you a few very quick examples. I'm not going to go through all 13. And like I said, I could have done 100, but then it would have been a 700-page book. So again, radical universalism, this idea that all religions are the same. It does not matter which religion you follow. We're all trying to get to the top of the same mountain. It doesn't matter which path you take. One path to the top of the mountain. Yes, that's exactly the cover. That's the cover. Yep. One path to the top of the mountain might be more scenic. One is a little longer. One is shorter. As long as you get to the top of the mountain, that's all that matters. How many people have heard this nonsense? Everyone has. Now, a very long time ago, something like 45 years ago, I heard this also because I attended talks by many fake gurus. And I began to think, well, wait a minute. Several things. Number one, what's on the top of the mountain? A. B, necessarily following A, who determines that? So we're all trying to get to the top of the same mountain. Really? What's on the top? All right, that's A. Let's determine that. B, once we've determined that, who decided that that's what we all desire? You see, and that's the problem. That's the first problem. The second problem is this. Having studied religion for all of my life, literally, and again, when I say study, I mean both personally and academically. I mean, it's not like I read a few books. I have a library of 3,000. I've studied religion all of my life. And one thing I've seen is that when you look at, forget the minor religions, so-called, even the so-called major religions, how many is that? It differs, the top 5, the top 10 religions. When you look objectively and philosophically at what their end goal is, what their soteriological end goal, what is their idea of salvation? Now, they're not just different. They're often diametrically opposed to one another. It's kind of like saying, what do you want for dinner? I want a veggie burger. I want a bulldozer. They're that diametrically opposed. They have nothing to do with each other. Now, this is the problem. Again, if you only have one mountain that somebody decides, oh, this is the goal that you're going to have now, whether you like it or not, what I've seen is that in actuality, there is not one mountain. Each religion is its own mountain.
As,
Yeah.
as you say.
Each religion is its own mountain.
Mhm.
Now, this is also the thing that's interesting. And I'm giving the briefest synopsis of this, just how I began thinking about this, again, like 45 years ago. This is the problem, and this is especially appealing indeed to the more new age, more wishy-washy, emotional sort of person out there. Now, what I'm about to say. If an individual were to try to come back and say, well, but I know we all have our different opinions, but we should all be trying to achieve this one idea of oneness, of this, of that. This is the difficulty, is that in your attempt to pretend that you're tolerant, you are trying to force people to value your goal that they don't want. And what often is that goal? There are a few things I need to say about this. Often that so-called on top of the mountain is the most generic, most general thing imaginable. Ask any of these fake guru universalists, all right, what is the supreme goal? They'll give you the most meaningless answer. Oh, when you get to the top of the mountain, I've heard so many of these frauds, I can imitate them quite well. When you get to the top of the mountain, it's all light. That's nice. Do I get to nap? Can I turn the light off once in a while? Oh, it's all love. Oh, all right, that's a little better. Let's have a nice little discussion and discuss what is the nature of love and what you mean by love. Because I can guarantee with your harem of disciples who you sleep with, I don't think you understand what love really means. So you see the problem. There's always one person choosing what is at the top of that mountain, and it's always generic. So this is a problem. This is just as a personal aside. I could never stand generic answers in spirituality. I read the Bhagavad Gita when I was 10 years old, and I read it for one reason. I wanted to know God, and I wanted to know God perfectly. I wanted to know that which is the source of all reality, and not with vagueness, but with as much specificity as possible. Why? Because you're talking about the most important topic in creation. Why not have specificity? Why be so vague? I didn't want vagueness. Anyone who's sincere does not want a vague answer. Oh, what is the nature of God? God is great. Oh, all right, nice. I kind of had deduced that already, but I want specificity. I wouldn't be seeking God if God were kind of mediocre. All right, no, not general answers. Whenever we're speaking to a spiritual teacher and they give us the most generic, general, meaningless, amorphous answers, that means that person knows less than zero. So yeah, this is the difficulty. So this whole idea of the top of the mountain, again, who is choosing this? Who is choosing? And more, this gets to the second part of what I was just speaking of. When it comes to tolerance, the idea of tolerance, okay, this person, whoever it is, chooses, oh, on top of the mountain is light. All right. What if I am a Christian and I want to meet Jesus on the top of that mountain? No, the light is nice. To me, Jesus is the light. You see, I want Jesus. What if I am a Buddhist? And you know what I want at the top of the mountain? Shunyata, nothingness. What if I am, and you see how this goes, the Jaina, very few people know about Jainism. The Jaina is seeking essentially a committee of liberated beings. That is what is considered to be the highest for the Jainas. So what do they want? They want to go to the top of the mountain, and there is a committee of Tirthankaras, of liberated beings, who they can now commune with. And on and on and on and on. Each person wants something different. Now, this is the thing. You, the radical universalist, oh so tolerant, no, on the top of the mountain is all light. What are you going to tell the Christian? Sorry, Christian, no Jesus for you. Sorry, Muslim, no Allah for you. So it is a radical intolerance in the name of tolerance. It is, in fact, a bigotry. Radical universalists, in their attempt to be so-called tolerant, but brainlessly so, what they end up doing is they become theological dictators. They dictate that all religions are one. What if my religion says all religions are not one? Which is actually what every religion says, including Sanatana Dharma. Again, this idea of radical universalism is 200 years old. But again, you see the problem is that philosophically, the self-contradictions within this statement that all religions are the same destroys itself. And it should destroy itself. It should be destroyed because indeed it leads to an intolerance. This is the last thing I'm going to say in case you have a question or something. Radical universalism, in a failed attempt to transcend religions, became its own religion. If you are not a radical universalist, if you don't believe as we do that all religions are one, there's something wrong with you, you see? And this is why I wrote the book.
And there's so much more you haven't even touched upon that is also in this book where you just keep going. Let me throw something out at you. You just said that, I'm going to paraphrase you, that no religion is saying that, all religions are saying that we're the way and this is the way. No religion out there, no mainstream religion, it's really talking about universalism. But you hear all the time that Sanatana Dharma does believe in radical universalism because Krishna said, all roads lead to me. Krishna said this in the Bhagavad Gita, and you hear that argument all the time. So I personally believe that is a misrepresentation and a mistranslation, but would you like to respond to that? You know the argument that you've seen this argument as many times as I have and a million times more, and everyone focuses on that one comment by Krishna. Could you debunk that?
Very easily. His statement is an ontological one, not a soteriological one. In other words, he makes that statement, and yes, it is mistranslated. It's not, he doesn't say literally that all roads lead to him. No, he is making an ontological statement about his own nature. What he's saying is, I am God. It doesn't matter what religion you think that you're following, I still am God. That's what he's saying. It's an ontological statement. How do we know this? Because in other places in the Bhagavad Gita, he makes it very clear. He says, if you worship the devas, the demigods, you go to the devas. If you worship ghosts and spirits, you go to the ghosts and spirits. If you worship the ancestors, you go to the ancestors. But if you worship me, God, you come to me. So indeed, he makes it very clear that no, all paths are not the same. And that in this one verse that you mentioned, he's not talking about paths. He's talking about himself. He's trying to make it clear that he is above all things and that ultimately, whatever an individual is doing, whatever path, forget about religious paths. Any path that a person is following in life, any karmic trajectory that a person is following, ultimately, when they achieve liberation, they come to Krishna, they come to God. So why is this the case? Because Krishna is that being who is the source of all reality. So you see, he's making an ontological statement. In other words, he's speaking about his own nature, transcending all things, being the center of all reality. But again, in other places, he does speak about specifically paths of soteriological paths, paths that people would follow in different religions. And he makes it very clear that they're distinct. If you do this, you go there. If you do this, you go there. If you do this, you go there. If you want to know me, the Supreme Godhead, then you come to me. So again, he makes it very clear. Yeah, there are only a few verses that these people quote where they try to pretend that, oh, you see, in the Vedic scriptures, there's one in the Rig Veda, for example. Oh, you see, it says it here in the book. I take these few quotes that they have, and I know Sanskrit exceedingly well. I do an analysis of them, and I show that no, that's not actually what these verses are saying. These individuals are lying.
I've always found it kind of interesting. People say, well, Krishna said this, and therefore that is a key belief of Sanatana Dharma. But for a key belief, you don't find it anywhere else. You know, I'm currently reading the Upanishads, and you don't see religious universalism talked about there. It's not talked about in the Srimad Bhagavatam. You don't see it elsewhere. So the whole argument is it's uneducated for me.
I can tell you, there are 3 verses.
Yeah, 3.
Well, first of all, let me back up. Do we understand how large the big scriptures are? It's not like the Bible, it's not like a few books. It's not the Quran, which is tiny. We're talking about a library of scriptures that would take a person, if you read 8 hours a day, it would take a third of your life to read them all. In all of that, they glommed onto 3 verses from that library. And again, I look at those verses and looking, not opinion, I translate the Sanskrit word for word, and I explain exactly what the verses are actually saying. They do not support radical universalism in any way whatsoever.
Speaking of deities, would you mind doing something for me? Would you, for those who are watching this, would you please tell me and them who are the deities over your shoulder on your shrine behind you?
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm speaking to you from our temple of the International Sanatana Dharma Society. This is our headquarters. And behind me is, collectively, both of these murtis, Sriman Narayana. So on my right, so right here, this is what often would be called Vishnu or Narayana. And then on my left is Lakshmi Devi, also known as Sriman. So to refer to them together, you say Sriman Narayana. And indeed, it's interesting. In Sanatana Dharma, the feminine comes first. I wrote an entire book about this called The Shakti Principle that goes very deeply into the metaphysics of why that's the case, and it has absolutely zero to do with feminism. It has to do with metaphysics, actually. But indeed, this is who this is. They are considered to be, while on the one hand, functionally distinct, and thus you can see 2 beings, in actuality, they're one. And, one in the true sense of that term, not a New Age sense. They are a divine moiety, what is called. So in other words, they are 2 aspects of one being. So it's interesting, I've said this many times, and I've never had even an unserious, what to speak of a serious Hindu leader, try to refute me on this. In Sanatana Dharma, we believe that the ultimate Godhead is indeed a dual being. Just like in Christianity, you have Trinity. You have Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, Holy Ghost if you're Catholic. But then in Sanatana Dharma, interestingly, is God one? Oh, of course, just like in Christianity. But at the same time, God is God, Goddess. There is the masculine and the feminine form, and they are non-distinct. So God is one, but on the other hand, functionally, you can see them as 2 separate aspects of God. So in other words, in Sanatana Dharma, behind me, these 2 beings together, this is God, Sriman Narayana.
So it's interesting that you mentioned Narayana, because before I started watching your videos, Sri Acharyaji, I never heard that phrase. I always heard the name Krishna, Vishnu, Shiva, whatever, Lakshmi. And then you started saying, well, no, Narayana is the name of God. Maybe you've said the highest name. I'm forgetting right now. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So I started saying that in all my videos. I often open them with Om Namo Narayana. Well, when I started reading the Upanishads, and I've read 75 of the 108, I started seeing validation for your statement. Over and over, I kept seeing Narayana mentioned in the Upanishads. I think a few of them even state that is the name. It's not Krishna, it's not Vishnu, it's not Lakshmi, it's Narayana. It's this powerful name, and I even came across the mantra that you have given. Over and over, I've seen that. And so it's validated your statement. Not that I didn't believe you, but it's just nice to see the physical evidence. Which, going back to our main thesis tonight, it's ironic because Narayana comes up over and over and over and over again. But yet this idea of radical universalism, 73 Upanishads down and I haven't seen it. Half the Srimad Bhagavatam and I haven't seen it. I've read a little bit of the Rig Veda, haven't seen it. But yet people hold that up. That's the truth. Radical universalism is the truth, but you have no evidence for it. And ironically, we never talk about Sriman Narayana, that word, but yet that is over. We see that over and over and over again. I think it really goes to show how folks are not well read in the scriptures and maybe not well educated and maybe listen to too much of these, I call them do-it-yourself gurus. I think you've called them the LA gurus, basically speaking gibberish. And God is love and God is great, which is really meaningless. And so I'm just tying what you just said about Narayana. We have so much evidence for that, but yet what you were talking about earlier, there's just no evidence for it other than 200 years ago with Roy or these others. You wrote in your book something kind of interesting. You said on page 169, for those curious who want to look this up, you're talking about how if Sanatana Dharma is promoting radical universalism, then and this is your quote, the Vedic religion's only contribution to the realm of religious history would be to negate its own existence by upholding the teachings of every other religion, while simultaneously denying its own inherent distinctiveness. And this comes in a chapter where you discuss the fact where if we're all about radical universalism, if all religions are one, we actually are hurting ourselves. We're ruining what makes us unique. We're actually I don't know what the right word is right now, but why even have all the religions? We're kind of shooting our own foot, for lack of a better phrase. So you touched on that a little bit earlier. If you wanted to expand on that now, for my sake.
Sure, definitely.
Please.
Well, yeah, again, there is no other real religion. And again, I need to make this distinction. Are there some modern cults, the Baha'is, etc.? Oh, sure. No, real religions, meaning ancient, thousands of years old, that have ruled over nations and created vast theology, etc. There is no real religion upon the face of the earth that upholds radical universalism. This is this is how the logic plays out. If it is indeed the case that Sanatana Dharma is the only religion upon the face of the earth that does uphold that does uphold radical universalism, what is the conclusion of this? Well, several things. First of which is this. All right, and I do lay this out in logical syllogism in the book. All right, no other religion understands the truth of radical universalism. Oh, but wait, Sanatana Dharma is the only religion that understands the truth of radical universalism. What is the conclusion? Sanatana Dharma is superior to every other religion upon the face of the earth, thus undercutting exactly radical universalism. Every other religion should submit to Sanatana Dharma because only we have the truth that all religions are one. You see, and that's one problem. The other problem is this, and that is the problem of self-negation of a religion, of a culture, of indeed a people. Because what is a religion? What is a religion? What is a religious culture? It's a people. If indeed only Sanatana Dharma teaches this, that, oh, no, it doesn't matter what you follow, it's all good, it's all wonderful, etc., etc. If Sanatana Dharma, and only Sanatana Dharma teaches this, Sanatana Dharma will then cease to exist, because every other religion believes the opposite and thus maintains its strength. Now, further, let's go even deeper to now a metaphysical issue. If radical universalism were true, and yet it leads to its own destruction, then the truth itself will die by its own hands. It will have committed suicide. No, thank you. This is not something that is logical, that is reasonable, that is common sense, that is attractive, that makes any sense in any way whatsoever. Why would someone want to follow something that is so self-negating to the point
Mhm.
where it leads to nothing? It leads to nothing, of course, we know, because it is nothing. This idea, this statement, all religions are the same, leads to nothing. It is a false statement. It is like saying, oh, the other day I drew a square circle. You can say the sentence, but it's nonsensical. You can say, oh, yeah, my brother is a married bachelor. Uh, you made mouth noises. You constructed a sentence that is devoid of meaning. There's no such thing as a married bachelor. You're either married or you're a bachelor, etc. So in the same way, this statement that, oh, all religions are one, all religions are the same, in the same way, it self-destructs because of its illogicality, and let me just state it, because of its utter stupidity. It is a stupid statement. It's this kind of statement a 5-year-old would make, and even then, not intelligent 5-year-olds. Because interestingly, children are capable of seeing distinction. It's only when a person takes too much drugs and they become a new age guru that they lose that ability that even a child has.
You go back to what I said at the beginning, introducing the talk, where you're echoing things I've heard you say in other videos a long time ago. That rationality you're speaking of blew my mind apart. Like I said at the beginning, I never thought of religion in terms of rational deduction, epistemology, and coming to a conclusion. I just would take it at face value. It felt good, and I'd move on to this crystal or that tarot card or that chant, and you just mix it all up, and you pray to Jesus and Krishna at the same time, and you don't think about it. And I always encourage people now on my show, on my YouTube stuff, to think rationally. My argument is, and maybe you disagree, and if you do, please say so. But I've kind of come to the opinion that you hear in Christian circles a lot. Folks like Ray Comfort and evangelists have made a living out of this argument that when you look around the world is perfect and the world is logical and everything makes sense. And according to the Christians who say this, that means that there's a God. That's their evidence that there's a God, because everything is just perfect. Okay, I'll agree with them for the sake of this. If that is so, if the world is perfect, why then would God have a religion that doesn't make sense, that is illogical, that leads us down to, as you said, a dead end that destroys itself? That doesn't make sense to me. Why create a logical world and then have a religion that just doesn't make sense? And so I always say that Sanatana Dharma, for example, is a very logical and rational religion. But as you said at the beginning of the show, there's many people who just look at it, they throw their hands up, and they run away confused. They go to a different thing because it's too much. Because the thing is with Sanatana Dharma, you can't digest it in one day. You can't read every scripture overnight or on the weekend, and you can't just read the Bhagavad Gita and go, oh, I know everything now. It's like school. You have to learn, and we all grow, and you grew, and every single one of us grows, and we learn more and more. And people don't have the time or the energy, or they hear some guru that just seems to give them the nice answers and they go with it. And then they end up in this place that's illogical and irrational. And I don't know. That's just become one of my pet peeves, is these illogical and irrational statements. No, God didn't create an illogical, irrational, universalist religion we're supposed to follow. I mean, that's just my opinion. There might be some philosophical problems with it, but that's kind of the view I've come to.
I not only agree 100%, but what you say is actually historically 100% true. This idea, it's maddening. This is an idea that modern so-called spiritual people, and who are these people? Can we be blunt? We're talking about urban folk, who are effete liberals, who really are not really serious. Spirituality is the latest fad for them. They just want to glom on to something because their life is very stressful and very understandable. They're hoping that something will just kind of give them some immediate relief. Most people who are so-called spiritual are not very philosophically inclined. But all that being said, this idea that, religion and rationality are at odds with each other is so recent that it is amazing. It would be amazing if people were to understand this. This idea has really only come about in roughly the last 60 years. Previous to that, people understood any aspect of what do you want to call it, religion or spirituality? It doesn't matter. It is meant to be something that is both rational and experiential. Now they've thrown out the rational and they want only the experiential. Why?
Yeah.
No, this is the question. Why? Because people are hedonistic today. All they want are the feels. They want the feels. They want feeling, feeling, feeling. They threw out the rationality. Now, of course, on the other hand, you have atheists. They claim they're rational. They're actually not. To defeat atheists philosophically is like the easiest thing conceivable. But, let's just say the atheists want to pretend they're hyper-rational and no experience, no feeling, no any of that. Sanatana Dharma, and truthfully, really interestingly, every religion made this claim that they wanted to have both. Even Christianity, Islam, all the religions, they tried to be rational. They had theology. If people today don't quite understand what theology is. Theology is strict philosophical constructs that pertain to religion and spirituality. That's theology. Every religion had its theology, where yes, you had to understand things in a very intelligent way, and they also had their mystical, quote-unquote, side, their so-called mystical side, where now you practice, and you go inward, and you experience higher spiritual truths, you experience God, etc. So that was the idea since the beginning of time. Now for roughly the past 60 years, and why? I can go very deeply into all the factors that were there. Modern urban effetes primarily threw out the rationality. And what did they want? They didn't want religion. They didn't even want spirituality. All these people who, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. No, actually, these people want neither. What they wanted was just some relief from the fact that their life is meaningless. In modernity, this is why I keep talking about urban effetes. And trust me, I was born and raised in New York City, so I know what I'm talking about. We have all these individuals who their lives are hell because they live in urban hellscapes, especially in 2024, with crime, with, you want to rent a studio apartment, you want to rent literally one room to live in it, $3,000, and on and on and on. A million problems that we can explain. So what is attractive to people now? So-called spirituality that is 100% emotional relief. So as a result, people today think that, yes, what it means to be spiritual is you don't think. You just kind of experience. That is not what spirituality was in the past for any legitimate teacher. That's not what it was for Jesus. For those people who like to go on Facebook and have these little quotes, the Buddha said. That was not the case for the Buddha. My Lord, he was logical in how he presented everything. He had a systematic worldview. I know, I've studied it. I've studied the Pali literature. He had a systematic philosophical worldview. Tao Te Ching, they don't understand how the Tao Te Ching is not just quote-unquote mystical. There is an inherent logic and philosophical construct that is there, and on and on and on. So what does it mean to practice true religion or spirituality? Again, whatever makes the person comfortable, whichever of those words. It means having this perfect combination of, on the one hand, using this most powerful of abilities known as the intellect, on the one hand. On the other hand, not being a slave to the intellect, but using that powerful intellect so that you can now understand how to do the practices that are necessary such that you can go within, that you can know yourself, have perfect self-realization, and more importantly than that, infinitely more important, have God realization. That's the whole point of religion and spirituality. If anyone out there is following something, anything, some fake guru on YouTube, some life coach, whatever it is, some new age tarot reading, crystal slinging sort of person, and they're not presenting what I just said, that perfect combination, and with that goal, stop wasting your time. Let me just end by saying this one last thing, because this apparently I've become famous for this saying now. Don't play games. What are we seeking as spiritual people? What are we seeking? We're seeking the most profound thing conceivable, not just a quick thrill, a quick rush. We are seeking the eternal. We are seeking that which, when you find it, you are paralyzed there on the spot with tears pouring down your cheeks because you realize that you have reached the source of all reality, and that source is a being of pure compassion and love and grace. That's what we're seeking. Stop playing games if you claim to be a spiritual person and getting sidetracked by minuscule, unimportant little issues and little things. Oh, well, this kind of relieved my tension a little bit today until tomorrow. This kind of gave me a happy feeling about myself. Oh, I guess I have some worth. That's all important too, but keep your eyes on the goal. The goal is that than which nothing greater can be conceived. The goal is, to use the English, German word, God. That which is the highest. That's what we're seeking. Seek the highest. Seek the highest. Seek the highest, and let nothing stop you. That's the thing. Look at the sages from the past. These were not weaklings. That's why I've said the true sages of the past were the greatest warriors. These were people who had courage. These were people who had discipline. These were people who nothing could stop them. They were unrelenting. They wanted to know truth. They did what was necessary, and they knew truth. We need to be like this. We need to let go of so-called religion and spirituality the way that it has been falsely presented to us in the past, again, 50, 60 years. We need to go back. We need to go back to those sages.
So it's interesting you would mention them because I just thought of, while you were talking, Adi Shankara. Last year, out of curiosity, I read about 30 of his writings. And what I found was he would take a topic, whatever it was, and then examine that topic in 15 different ways. I remember reading his writings, and it would be very repetitious on some level, but what he was actually doing was like spokes on a tire. He was looking at it from every single direction and going on every single argument and looking at the contradictions and the things that other people would say. It's very logical. While personally I didn't always resonate with stuff from Adi Shankara, my respect for him just went through the roof because he was so logical. Then you turn today to whatever run-of-the-mill wannabe millionaire guru you find, and it's like they can't even stay on one topic long enough to give you anything of any depth. I want to ask, to bring our talk to a close tonight, I want to ask sort of a down-to-earth question. We've been talking a lot of ideas, some history, and I can never thank you enough for all you've shared tonight. I don't have the words. Someday I'll tell you in person, face to face, how much I appreciate this and how much I look up to you. And but I want to ask, for those people who maybe they were with a guru, someone who threw out something, and they know that's not right, or maybe they've studied like the Americanized yoga, and they're like, no, I want more, or they want to go that step. They know what they've learned is sort of gibberishy, or it doesn't make sense, or there's a feeling inside of them that just tells them it's the wrong path, and they want to know Sanatana Dharma. They not want to know what it really is. They want to help keep it alive, to make sure it's not an endangered species. They don't want this Neo-Hinduism thing. What would you tell them? Where should somebody go? What should they seek? What is your advice to someone looking for the truth? essentially.
Very good. Yes, I can definitely address that. Let me first start with this being very broad and then get more specific. First of all, I can't, again, I've been on this path, for many, 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 many decades, and I've seen everything. Very often I'll encounter someone and I'm speaking to the person about, lineages in Sanatana Dharma. And in my mind, and in the mind of the scriptures, and again, Orthodox people, we know what that means. A lineage goes back to the beginning of time. And I'm speaking to this person, oh, yeah, I'm part of a lineage too. I follow Swami, blah, blah, blah. And he had a guru, and he had a guru, and it goes back 150 years. And he says this as if that's impressive. This is one way in which, one of 100 ways, in which an individual can know that, they're following a guru. Is it something real? A lineage does not go back 200 years, 150 years, even 300 years. It goes back to the beginning of time. And this is another way in which you can know orthodox, i.e. authentic Sanatana Dharma versus Neo-Hinduism. The Neo-Hindus, they only go back, again, 200 years. Versus Sanatana Dharma. The lineage that I'm in quite literally goes back to the beginning of time. It goes back to Sri Lakshmi herself. It goes back to before this world was created. And we know all the individual gurus from her down to this very day. So that's one thing. That's of importance. The other thing is where a person seeks is also of great importance. If they want to get through this dark, vast jungle of whatever you want to call it today, Hinduism, Vedic, milieu, whatever you want to call it, they need to make sure that the knowledge that they are getting is knowledge that is itself authentic, not someone's opinion. That's of vast importance. A true guru, a true spiritual teacher, never says, oh, yes, I came up with these ideas. I had a realization that no one had ever thought about before, and I'm going to teach this to you now. That's a fraud. Run away quickly. Don't look back. Don't look back. Run away quickly. A true guru tells you, what I am teaching you, I am just a vessel for, and it was taught to me by my guru, by his guru, by his guru, by his guru, by his guru, going back again to the beginning of time. So you need to look at the source of the knowledge. A true teaching, Vedic teaching, is again based upon the actual scriptures. If you find a so-called guru and he is not always commenting on the scriptures, get away from that person. Again, you've seen our live streams. 98% of our live streams, of my live streams, is me commenting on the Vedic scriptures. And Vedic scriptures, some of which almost no one has even heard of. They're so rare. Upanishads, no one's heard of, Paramasamhita Pancharatra, we spent like 4 months going through that. No one's heard of that. Well, that's important. A so-called guru, if he is real, he comments on the scriptures. Again, how many people are there who they know nothing about the scriptures? I'm like you, I'm not going to name names. There's one big guru who has millions of followers, and he has admitted that he's barely read the Bhagavad Gita. No, there is no such thing in our tradition. If a person is a guru, a spiritual teacher, they comment on the scriptures, they follow the scriptures. In fact, may I give you just a quick little listing for individuals who are looking for a guru? They know the scriptures perfectly. Oh, I'm using the word perfectly.
Would you define perfectly?
Yes, what that means is the gist of what is being said. So in other words, by perfectly, it doesn't mean that you can say, oh, all right, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, verse, what is said there? No, not perfect recall. What is meant by perfect is that they can comment on any scripture. They can go from an Upanishad to the Bhagavad Gita to a Purana to anything, and their teaching is consistent and in accordance with the scripture and the scriptures alone. That's the definition of perfect shastric knowledge. Shastra means scripture. So they have to have that. Number two, they have to, again, have been in an actual lineage. They have to have received real initiation, Not, oh yes, I had a dream and blah, blah came to me. No, no, no. They had to have had real gurus. This is very important. They have to be a 100%, again, perfect, ethical and moral individual. What is meant by that? That means that, and I'll spell it out, a spiritual teacher does not do drugs of any kind. No ayahuasca, oh, I'm so spiritual, I'm doing a spiritual drug. No, no marijuana. They don't do drugs. They don't smoke. They don't drink alcohol. It means that they are vegetarian. There's no such thing as a Vedic guru who is not vegetarian. They must be vegetarian. It means that they do not sleep around. They don't have a harem of disciples who they sleep with. It means that they are either celibate or monogamous. If they are unmarried, they're celibate. If they are married, they are monogamous. And on, what we understand to mean morality. If they fall from that and they start trying to give excuses, oh, well, yes, I was pretending to be celibate, but oh, yeah, I guess it's come out 10 of my female disciples and said that I've had sex with them. No, actually, I was doing secret tantric practices. No, that's a fraud. That's a fraud. And yeah, etc. Again, it's a long list. We have several videos where I speak about the qualifications of a guru.
And I want to make note for anyone who's hearing this, you didn't make that list up. Those, whatever, 5, you didn't make this up. And I will validate that because I've read on my channel numerous Upanishads that have listed what a guru is, what a spiritual, authentic spiritual teacher is. I have read numerous Upanishads that are saying what you're saying and many more things. Yeah, so there's nothing that you have just made up. So for anyone who wants to say, well, wait a minute, but you're making stuff up. No, I will validate. I've seen it. And the Srimad Bhagavatam, others, you're presenting a very old idea that was taught by your teachers and their teachers, and we can trace to the scriptures. So I just wanted to put that in for any concerning folks.
I appreciate that. This is one of many things that first attracted me to Sanatana Dharma, again, when I was about 10 years old, is that, interestingly, as much as, again, fraudulent people try to pretend that, oh, there are mysteries in the Vedic scriptures, there are contradictions, oh, we just don't know, oh, what's the nature of God, oh, who knows. Interestingly, what attracted me to this path is that nothing is a mystery. So even when it comes to, for example, the question of what is a guru, oh, people want to pretend it's a mystery. Oh, you got your opinion. No, but like you said, yes, in the scriptures it explains. I have noted hundreds of verses from all throughout the scriptures, and they do not contradict each other, where they will give lists of the qualities, not only of true gurus. There are verses where they tell you what is a fake guru as well. That's how detailed this is. They'll tell you point blank, if your guru says this, does this, it's a fraud.
The irony of that is you often see fraudulent gurus like the one you mentioned or referred to who tell you not to read the scriptures. Because, and I say this on my channel so often, I think I've started editing it out because I'm tired of hearing myself say it. If these gurus read the scriptures, they would be debunked instantly.
Yes.
And they know that the people who follow them haven't read the scriptures, and they're telling you, don't read the scriptures, or the gurus have done their own interpretation, which you can buy for $24 in hardcover or softcover, and you should read that instead. And because if you read this stuff, you'd look for the exit, and you'd walk out, and you'd realize who you were following is wrong. So I tell people all the time, if your guru doesn't talk about the scriptures, yeah, maybe this isn't, maybe you should start backing up. That's just one little thing to look for of many things.
Absolutely.
Sri Acharyaji, I'm going to let you go at this point. Unless there's anything more you want to share. I don't want to keep you too late, though.
Other than, again, I want to thank you for this wonderful opportunity. We've spoken in the past, and yes, you're someone who I'm very happy that you have your channel, and it's everywhere. It's not just YouTube; it's on other platforms as well. I'm very happy that you have this channel because from the first moment that we spoke, I immediately was struck by your sincerity. And sincerity is not a feeling. Sincerity means that you want to know the truth regardless of anything, regardless of if is it popular or anything. You just want to know the truth.
Yeah, I don't care about making friends or gaining subscribers. And I told you before, and I'll say it again, I want everyone to fulfill their goal and to live their fullest life. And for me, that means doing what God may have in store for you, or following your destiny, if one believes that, or your fate. I want everyone to live their life fully. And as I said to you recently, living your life fully doesn't mean watching TV for 8 hours a day and watching porn. That's God didn't put you here to do that. While that may sound fun, there's more to life than that. And since I was born, I've always been like this. I want people to live. And so my channel is just a way of telling folks that there is great things out there, and don't give up. Don't turn on the TV and tune out. Just go for it. And if something is hard, that's okay. You'll be a better person for conquering that. That's all it is. And I get to share your message with others because you've been influential to me, and I know for a fact you've been influential to many people. And with that, I want to say a big shout out to your students who are in the room listening to this right now. I really appreciate you all hanging out for this past hour and a half. So thank you very much to all of you there who I can't see, but just a big shout out.
Very quickly, everyone. Jaya Sriman Narayana. Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Thank you so much. I'll say that in person someday. Sri Acharyaji, I'm going to let you go. I'm going to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing this with me and sharing. And folks should check out your book, Radical Universalism. And I'll say right now, as you said, it's just over 200 pages. You can read it in a couple weeks. It's not going to bog you down. It's not super textbookish. It's not mind-boggling. It's something that you can digest very easily. It's on Amazon. It's probably in other places out there. Check it out. And also, I've read 4 of your other books, and I would recommend folks to check those out too. If you don't know who Sri Acharyaji is, just amazing stuff, mind-blowing, and radical teachings. And again, I'll say I think Sri Acharyaji is one of the greatest gurus we have living with us today. So please take advantage of him. There is links down below to his website, to his YouTube channel, which I've been watching for 5 years now. So I highly recommend it. And I don't just say that to feed his ego or anyone else. I sincerely mean that this is a channel you need to be watching and you need to subscribe to hear more from him. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you so much for joining me. And until we speak again, I wish you all the best. And thank you.
Thank you again. This was a wonderful experience. Namaste.
Namaste.